Bonjour tout le monde. Donc, merci d'être si présent en si grand nombre aujourd'hui. Je m'appelle Karina Riviello. Je suis votre hôtesse pour la soirée. I'll be your hostess for the night. Je vous rassure tout de suite, le panel est en anglais, mais je vous fais une autre présentation du début en français. So, panels in English for those who might be maybe a bit stressed right now, who came all the way from Toronto, maybe. On a un super beau panel aujourd'hui. On va parler de la hausse de la fraude dans le secteur de la technologie financière, comme vous le savez, depuis 2020. En fait, il y a toujours eu de la fraude dans le secteur des fintechs. Ça ne va qu'en augmentant depuis quelques années. On a un set de panélistes exceptionnels pour vous. Je ne vais pas tout de suite vous les présenter. Je pense que mon collègue va le faire tantôt, mais je pense que vous devez avoir hâte de les rencontrer. Si vous ne connaissez pas Fintech Cadence, je vous fais un petit topo rapide. Nous sommes une organisation à but non lucratif qui, on est là pour faire avancer le système financier pour tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes. Notre organisation s'oriente autour de 3 grands thèmes. We have 3 big teams within Fintech Cadence. L'éducation, faire l'éducation autour de la technologie financière, collaborer avec ce grand secteur et inclure tous les acteurs dans notre écosystème entrepreneurial et bien sûr, soutenir nos entrepreneurs. Si vous voulez nous suivre sur LinkedIn, n'hésitez pas à scanner le code QR et c'est là qu'on partage littéralement tous nos événements, les programmes pour nos entrepreneurs et autres ressources qui pourront clairement vous être utiles. On ne pourrait pas organiser des événements comme ceux-ci sans l'aide de nos partenaires. Donc, chaleureusement, j'aimerais vous dire un grand merci et j'aimerais également vous inviter à venir sur scène. Donc, tout d'abord, Michael Yonder de Scotiabank. Si tu pourrais... Oui, un applaudissement, s'il vous plaît. Michael, if you can join me on here, please.
Merci. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Yonder. I'm from Scotiabank, or more specifically, Scotia Digital. So we stand up digital products, capabilities, and experiences at Scotiabank, and we do that through important partners like Fintech Cadence and the startups that they mentor in their program. So it's great to be here for a second year. I was here actually in November for the last event here in Montreal, and we are looking forward very much to our plan this coming year. I'm also joined by a colleague, Mine Shushank, who you just saw, who's way smarter than me in fintech fraud space. I'm a victim of fraud. This summer, our family was hosed out of some Taylor Swift tickets. That was not fintech related, but it still stung. So this is an important topic, and we're in the month of fraud prevention as well. So looking forward to the panel. Very nice to meet everybody.
Thank you. Up next, we have Luge Capital. I would like to invite Davino.
Hey, everybody. Super happy to have you guys all here. I want to take a second actually to thank, of course, Fintech Cadence, but also Espace CDPQ. They're, this environment really helps support startups everywhere and investors that help support them. So we get this location for free to host these kinds of events. So thank you very much to Espace CDPQ. We've been a partner at Luge with Fintech Cadence for about 7 years, Leal. 7 years, yeah, 7 years. So since the beginning, we have about $180 million that we invest in early stage fintech companies. We have Inscora that's here. We've got Emma. We've got Flinks, Deck, a number of others, and maybe one of you guys will become a portfolio company soon enough. So we got Rohan on our team who's here, so feel free to reach out to him, reach out to us. We love to hear ideas. We love to hear about your business. And it might not be the time to close financing immediately, but you develop a relationship, and we've got money to deploy longer term. So thank you very much, Leal. Thank you for the team. Thank you for allowing me to say a couple of words, and we'll see you next year as a sponsor again.
Thank you. Up next, MasterCard. I have Amisha. Oh, yes. Misha was also one of our speakers tonight.
Thank you so much, and really great to see everybody, and great to be here. And as Michael mentioned, Fraud Prevention Month, and so it feels really timely to be in this forum. At MasterCard, we're very committed to empowering fintech innovation and fueling this next generation of trailblazers. And so as a result, really, really thrilled to be partnering with Fintech Cadence and supporting the growth of the fintech ecosystem in Canada. So thank you so much.
Chez Mastercard, nous nous engageons à stimuler l'innovation dans le domaine des fintech au Canada. C'est pourquoi nous sommes ravis de collaborer avec Fintech Cadence pour soutenir et renforcer les fintech canadiennes.
Chez Fintech Cadence, notre mission est d'accélérer la croissance de l'écosystème Fintech au Canada en fournissant aux startups les bons outils, ressources et connexions. Grâce à ce partenariat avec Mastercard, nous créons encore plus d'opportunités pour les fondateurs afin qu'ils puissent se développer et prospérer.
Ensemble, nous contribuons à façonner l'avenir du FinTech au Canada.
Went too fast. La misère est mon clicker. Avant de passer à la section de nos startups, j'aimerais inviter un nouveau partenaire, notre Fintech Challenge Partner Humania, qui aimerait vous présenter justement le Fintech Challenge pour 2025. Donc, je vais inviter Martin à venir me rejoindre pour donner quelques mots. Ah, ben, deux. Ben, deux pour le prix d'un, écoutez.
French or English? Ce que je préfère, I can go a little bit of English if the. So we're proud to be the sponsor of a new event right here at Fintech. Thank you for this opportunity. Before we speak a little bit about travel insurance in the Tourmed, I'm gonna give to Nicolas, which is the CEO of Humania.
Pleasure to be here. My first year at Fintech Cadence. Amazing. I know we've worked together in my previous life. Humania Insurance, we've been around for about 150 years in the space of assurance de personnes, l'assurance vie, invalidité, maladie grave, ainsi que l'assurance voyage, autant en assurance individuelle, group insurance, and travel. So I'm going back and forth just for everybody to get at least a piece of the... we focus on two key elements, customer experience and innovation. Fun fact, and then I'll let Martin present the project. Fun fact, we're probably the only insurer in Canada that answers 99% of their calls within 1 minute. That's exceptional customer service. And second fun fact would be, we've been working with InsurTechs for over 6 years now in this distribution space. Proud partners, Mr. No mentioned before Emma. So we've been working with Emma for many years and offering insurance in a different fashion. So that's what we like to do. We like to, as our mission states, rendre l'assurance accessible. And how do we do that? Well, our vision clearly states it, which is tailor-made insurance. So I'll let Martin continue with the actual mandate.
All right, thank you. So Tourmed is going to be 30 years old in the next year. What Tourmed does, it does everything from product development, assistance, and claims management. So the innovation competition today, it's to so Snowbird is really the core client. So help us create an innovative solution that enhance the travel experience for Snowbird. Comme vous vous en doutez, le marché des snowbirds modifie, le snowbird modifie, le taux de change a un impact. Je vois des gens sourire dans la salle. Donc, on veut trouver une solution pour améliorer l'expérience de voyage des nouveaux snowbirds et des snowbirds actuels. On lance ça, pas plus d'encadrement et on a bien hâte de voir les différentes propositions qui vont nous être soumises.
Un très cool projet, donc gardez l'œil ouvert parce qu'on va l'annoncer sur les réseaux sociaux. LinkedIn surtout. On va passer à notre prochaine section. Comme si vous êtes un habitué de nos FinTech Drinks, vous savez qu'on invite souvent des startups au pitcher au début avant notre panel. Donc, je vais inviter la première startup qui est Inscora. Donc, Gabriel, si tu pourrais me rejoindre sur scène. Le plancher est à toi.
I won't be needing that. I have no slides. I hope you have a good imagination. I'm Gabriel, CEO of Inscora. And what does Inscora do? We are building sales enablement solution for cyber brokers. I know it's a long thing. If you don't know what is cyber insurance, quick recap. If you are giving money to someone, you're a lender, you're a bank, you're an investor. You might want to have some insurance that this person, if he gets hacked, doesn't give it right away to somebody else. So this product exists mainly to cover people for cybersecurity incidents, loss of data, anything you can think about. It's a very self-fulfilling prophecy of cybersecurity. Acquiring a cyber policy is hard. You have to fill hundreds of questions. You need to figure out what does it mean, what does it do? And it's not something that is pleasant if you ever had to get one. In that process, you're gonna meet someone, a cyber broker, and that person is there to help you get through these things. So what we do in Scora, we build a solution for these people. The question I was asked when I came in here was, how do we use AI in the platform? And I mean, everybody uses AI now. We use it, I think, in three main ways. Through the process of acquiring a policy, a broker needs to be able to reach for a new client. I mean, they have to find new clients. And to do that, they're gonna get what we call a cyber evaluation, an insurance scan of a company or a given target company. Well, to do that, you need to have a scanner, a solution that will figure out what's the security, what are the different insurability score of a client. We use AI there to generate a next generation security scanner that talks specifically for the insurer. That helps the broker find talking points to reach for these clients and have a better discussion with them about how or why should they get that coverage in the first place. Like I said, if that discussion goes really well, the client still has to go through this humongously large questionnaire. We used AI at Inscora in a way that we've took every single questionnaire of every single carrier you can think about in the world. We crunched them together into what we called a cyber unified questionnaire. And then we are working with that with the client. So that's one of the other use. And through this process, these unified questions, they will be complicated. So we can use models to explain to the client what the question means, what does it mean, what should go there as an answer, and what are the pitfalls that could happen there. We also use AI to do that. And that's what we do. We accompany we go with the client through the process to do a policy acquisition. And that's it. So we're in Scora, we're selling sales enablement solution for cyber brokers. And we are about to kickstart our seed round. So if you're an investor in the fintech sector, you can come talk to me and learn a bit more about the product. Thank you.
3 minutes on the dot, that's it. Bon, merci beaucoup, Gabriel. Prochaine startup, je vais inviter Charles-André de ISO App.
Bon, bonjour à tous. Merci encore de English, yeah. So hi everyone, thank you again for Fintech Cadence for inviting us. So my name is Charles and today I'm going to present to you my new baby. She's called EZO. So here in the room, how many people owns crypto? And fast because I am on the timer. All right, perfect. Thank you very much. So at EZO, we're building the super crypto app, okay? I've been in crypto forever. You guys don't see this, but I have a Bitcoin tattoo on my forearm. I got 7 years ago, so I've been in that space. In crypto, there's a big problem. All right, so this, I come back to these slides later. There's a big problem. CeFi, DeFi is segmented. CeFi, money in your bank account. DeFi, you take cash, you give it to your friend. No, this is the difference. And in the space right now, both of these ecosystems don't talk to each other. There's too many services. They suck. Even me, I am lost in UI. So if I am lost, I guarantee you guys, you will be lost as well. There's no centralized space. The fees are disgusting. What we're proposing is one place to do anything. Actually, we have a few of us, our first clients are actually in the room today. And GP, looking at you. And so we're proposing a super app that combines both CeFi, DeFi together, one click to do anything, much more simple UI to use and better fees. So this is our ecosystem. There's not enough time today to talk about that, but it covers everything that you can find into a CeFi ecosystem. So buy, sell, swap, on-ramp, off-ramp, very easy to use. Actually, you know, a bunch of the time people, they say the regulator, they annoy us for that, but I thank them for regulating us because they force us to develop something specific for the CeFi side that actually we totally redefine how we do the DeFi stuff, and it's a killer app, and it's working pretty well. So it's the best. I guarantee you, everybody that owns crypto in the space, come talk to us. We'll give you much better rate than CheckPay and friends. And it's going to be one place. It's either full custody. Custody is when you control your money. We control your money. Non-custody is when you control the money. This is the best. Trust me, you'll see this everywhere within 6 months. So today we have to talk a bit about fraud. So the biggest problem we're facing today is what we call the legal fraud. And the legal fraud is your mother buying Bitcoin to send it to whatever scam X. And the problem with that is that when your mother calls us and say, hey, I want to buy Bitcoin, the consumer is legit, the money is legit. We have absolutely no way of knowing why she wants to use the Bitcoin because, of course, they're going to tell us it's for investment, blah, blah, blah. So it's very hard. And I think as a financial sector, we have to figure out that thing that we call the legal fraud because how do you really know what the consumer will do with the money? Because I cannot stop it. We've been able to stop more than 2 million in the last 2 months going to random stuff by talking to consumer and telling them, you're getting frauded, do not do this, you will lose your money. And they are big clients today. So we're also raising, we've bootstrapped 2.2 million to get where we are today since 2022. We're raising 3 million right now at a pretty spicy valuation, but we have reasoning behind that. And half of the round is already filled, so come talk to me if you want. That's it, the best. No time.
Also 3 minutes on the dot. That's it. Like it. Bon, sans plus tarder, merci à nos startups d'ailleurs pour avoir pitché. C'est des excellents pitchs. Pour continuer la soirée, j'aimerais inviter mon collègue Lorenzo de Souza pour nous parler. Lorenzo, excuse-moi, je change son nom à chaque fois. Pour nous présenter nos 3 panélistes. Donc,
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Oh, I got a clap too. I love it. Thank you, thank you. Well, the clap can come at the end of the panel discussion. So before I announce anything, I do want to say if you want to find Humania through the rest of this event, and if you want to win one of those $35,000 in prizes, they're wearing the purple lanyards. So you raise your hands up there so everyone can find you through the event. So if you want to find Humania to talk to them, there they are, and they're wearing their purple lanyards. So, well, everyone, thank you for coming out on a Wednesday evening to be at this FinTech Drinks with us and discuss fraud in FinTech. Before we jump into the actual panel discussion, we typically like to have the audience engage with us while we do these panel discussions. We think you have a lot to say, just as much as the panel. So in order to do that, we use Mentimeter. Some of you have probably used this before, but for the ones who haven't, I would say actually everyone pull out your phone if you can, scan the QR code. I noticed some people don't want to pull their phones out, but that's fine.
Am I going to get infected?
Absolutely. That's how we train people with fraud. We infect their phones and then. Yep. That's part of it. Just make sure it's the right one. So does everyone have it? Yep. Oh, I don't have the clicker. I just noticed. Can I get the clicker? There we go. Amazing. Okay, so we're going to do a quick test run. Does everyone have it up? Do you see it on your phones? Yeah? Yeah, okay. You probably, I see the thumbs up there. There we go. Okay, so we're going to quickly test this out. So what is your current role? Can you guys all see it on your phones? Don't forget to hit submit. Click and then submit right at the bottom. I will not see it unless you click submit. And then once you've submitted, make sure you hit the thumbs up. There, okay. Lots of founders I see. Amazing. Lots of people who work at FinTech. Okay. Corporates as well. Amazing. Okay. Looks like it's working out great. Okay. Super. Okay. Next, I'm going to do another quick question to test this out before we get the panel on stage. Have you ever been a victim of fraud? Let's be honest here. If you have, there's no shade. 35, that is not what I expected. 43, okay. So a good portion of you have been victims of fraud. So I did want to share a couple of statistics with you before we got started with this panel. But in 2023, Canadians reported $567 million in losses from various scams. And that marked about a $37 million increase from the previous year. And we've noticed that number has only been increasing ever since. In fact, to give you more context, in the last 6 months alone, about 10% of Canadians have reported some form of payment fraud. And about 60% of those people have reported some financial losses associated. So I just want to put that into context. That's 1 in 10 Canadians. So that's 1 in 10 people in this room, but it seems like it's 50% of this room, or probably higher. I see it's 45. So it's 45 to 41. So it's a really high number. So as fintechs kind of grow and evolve and innovate, it's important that fraud becomes a central conversation. So over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to try 30 to 35 minutes. We're going to try and discuss fraud in a little bit more depth for the fintech ecosystem, as well as try to understand how can we better be prepared for any eventuality. So with that said, could I invite the panel on stage? Now we can all give a loud cheer. I didn't need the cheer, they do. Let's get them motivated. Oh, I have 2 mics here. Can I return 1 mic?
Yes, good.
I don't think we can hear Shashank.
How about now?
Yep, there we go.
How about now? Good. That number is underreported. I can tell you now, 50% is a conservative estimate. It's a $500 million problem in Canada. It's a $500 billion problem globally. 2 or 3 articles before, economists did a coverage. They call it Scam Inc. And these stats actually are quite underreported. So,
well, this is why we have you guys to help us be honest with this. Super. So before we get started, maybe we could start with a quick introduction. And I think something that I definitely want to understand is, what are some fraud trends, maybe 1 or 2 fraud trends that really keep you up at night? Maybe Charles. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charles Klein. I've been in the fintech space for about 10 years now, working for a couple of local companies you may have heard of, Nuve, Lightspeed Commerce. Most recently, I'm director of risk and compliance at a BC-based company called Peloton Technologies, where we do B2B payments. And because of the fact that we're B2B, for me, the fraud trends that keep me up at night really are everything around business email compromise, account takeover. We have a pretty sophisticated onboarding system. So, the likelihood of illegitimate businesses getting on the platform are pretty low, but we can't prevent people getting hacked, business email compromise, et cetera. So that's the stuff that keeps me up at night.
Hi, my name is Shashank. I work with Scotiabank. I've been with the bank for 8 years now, banker my whole life. In product management, my focus right now is identity and access that I have been working in for the past 8 years now, almost at the bank. What keeps me up at night? We are not prepared for what is coming. We are infrastructurally not prepared. Policy-wise, we are not there. There is no collaboration, and no one is seeing this problem. People who are in the industry, who are dealing with this challenge, see this day and night, and they are trying hard to move the needle, but they can't just yet. That's what keeps me up at night.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amisha Parikh. I'm here. I'm with MasterCard. I'm part of the security solutions team responsible for our security product suite in Canada. And I've been with MasterCard for 6 years and in the technology space prior. What keeps me up at night? So although I share some of those concerns that you've shared, I will say more specifically a few things that I think about. AI-powered fraud, I think everyone can attest to that. AI is not new. It's been around for 5 decades. Many people have been using it. But the threshold for cyber criminals to get access to technology and use it no longer requires technology expertise. Everything is offered as a service. And it's actually, as you kind of explore that, unbelievable. And so as we think about embracing technology, the bad actors in the ecosystem are embracing it at a pace and speed that's faster because they don't worry about the regulatory environment that we operate in. They don't worry about ethical use. So that's definitely one. The other one is around identity. I think when we think about just identity theft and the risk of personal information being exposed and how prevalent kind of we're seeing identity theft, synthetic ID fraud taking place, account takeovers kind of across industry, very concerning. And the third, which I think a number of people have touched upon, is scams. We're just seeing scams everywhere, right? We've heard about the romance scams, we've heard about grandparent scams, we've heard about this term, which is an unfortunate one, but pig butchering. And then what's paired with that is just a lot of misinformation. So we think about takeover and impersonation fraud, and just really concerning that that misinformation is harder and harder to detect when you see impersonations of institutions or organizations that you really otherwise would trust being kind of impersonated and sharing that misinformation. So I think all of those things are quite concerning. I agree with you that I think collaboration is key. I maybe am a little more optimistic that I think we are on a path to collaboration, which is going to help us to combat this. But you're absolutely right. It's a collective effort and requires not just a network or the banks or the telecommunication or the fintechs and industry, the merchants, but it's really everyone together combined with, the regulatory environment. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And I think something that really stood out there that's probably going to keep me up at night tonight, at least, is the fact that the barrier for entry has reduced, right? The barrier for entry for fraudsters has reduced. Everyone can get into fraud if they want to at this point, right? So that is a scary prospect to think about. So we have to be prepared for that, especially right now. Before I move to the next question, I want to turn it over to the audience for a quick second again. There we go. Oh, not sure what happened there. Yeah. Okay, do you see this question up on your screens? Amazing. Okay, so the question to the audience, what do you think the biggest challenge facing the fintech industry when it comes to fraud? And kind of while the audience is answering this question here, the question to the panel here, and Amisha, maybe I'll start here with you since this next statistic is actually from MasterCard, but a recent survey by MasterCard, in fact, revealed that 76% of Canadians are concerned about fraud attempts really affecting their financial well-being. So I guess my question to the panel here, and Amisha, to you as well, is why do you think that number is that high? And I guess, do you think these fears are warranted on some level? And kind of turning over to this little question that we have to the audience here, but where does that risk really lie for fintechs as well as financial institutions?
I think it's a really great question. Unfortunately, I think the answer to the second part of your question is yes. I think this fear is warranted. I think we're continuing to see the proliferation of many types of fraud. You turn on the news, and I think in any given week, there is a news story about fraud, about scam, about a data breach happening to, a large scale kind of data breach to an entity. So we're kind of bombarded with this being the world around us. I would think that everyone has either, we saw it in the poll, either been a victim of fraud or knows somebody who's been a victim of fraud or a scam or has seen it coming in on your phone every third day telling you that they're the CRA and they're coming after you. It's all around us. I think to a stat you kind of pointed out earlier in 2024, right? It's like $600 million of losses. Only 5 to 10% of losses actually get reported. So the number is significantly higher. And the reason for some of that, there's lots of reasons. I think people are really believe that they're vigilant. And so when these losses happen, people are shocked, surprised. Sometimes there's, ashamed. And so they don't report these things right away. And the longer it takes to report, the harder it is to ever find these criminals. Because with things like money meal accounts, and the speed at which money can move into alternative payment currencies, it's very risky. I think, sorry, to the question about the biggest challenges, I think concerns around access to customer data and that being breached, personal information that you store that's in your trust, of utmost concern. It lends to the risk around cyber attacks. Smaller organizations, we say things like, it's not if you'll be exposed to fraud as a fintech, as a small business, as a large business, it's when. But the importance of prioritization of proactive measures, I think we're still in an environment where we're very reactive. Something happens and everyone's trying to find out why, and then make sure that it doesn't happen again, versus proactively leveraging technology and leveraging the collaboration that we need to do across industry to prevent these things from happening.
Yeah, Charles, would you like to weigh in here as well?
Lots of similar talking points. I think Amisha hit pretty much everything on the head. On my end, data breaches, PII, right? I think pretty much everyone out there has some piece of PII floating around on the internet. For those who don't know, something that's called a full or fulls, you can buy a full set of ID for about $20 on average in the US. A little bit more expensive if they have good credit, et cetera. So that's everybody in this room. Right? Everyone has PII out there. And to Amisha's point, I think everybody in this room probably experiences some form of scam, text, call, email. I know I get them pretty much on a daily basis. And all it takes is one moment of inattention, and suddenly you're handing over that one piece of information that they didn't have. And now they have it, and they can start accessing your accounts. I haven't been victim yet, but as an example, recently, got a text from who I thought was my CEO. I was busy kind of like jumping back and forth between tasks, started responding, took about 3 messages before I realized, wait a second, this isn't a legitimate way that my CEO would contact me. But in those 3 messages, I divulged a team member's name, what I was working on, and what I was, focusing on for the next kind of couple of hours. So, again, in that specific incident, nothing major came out of it, but now they have confirmation of who I work for. They have confirmation of my CEO's name because I responded to it. They have confirmation of my phone number. And with those pieces, they can go out and do more. So I think that, totally warranted to be vigilant. And even people who are day in and day out in this space, again, that moment of inattention can really get you. Beyond that, I think some of the stats that you mentioned, very accurate. Not only are the numbers underreported, but I think one thing that a lot of jurisdictions aren't doing well is there's an even smaller percentage of those funds that are actually recovered. Very few fraudsters get caught and, put on trial and go to jail. So really, for people who want to get money via fraud, the barrier to entry much lower, as mentioned. Really, there's very little repercussion if you do get caught. Even if you do get caught, the likelihood of you, ending up in jail, pretty minimal. And if you're good with money movement, you can scroll that money away, crypto, other funds, the other side of the world, have it jump a couple of jurisdictions, and it's almost impossible for it to come back. So, and then as far as the question goes about keeping up with evolving threats, I think, both regulated entities and fintechs, generally speaking, do a pretty good job from a cybersecurity perspective, right? Like we have all kinds of security protocols that we need to follow, PCI DSS for those of us in the credit card space. So fraudsters have realized that the weak point are the customers, right? So keeping up with the evolving threats involves educating your customer base, making sure that they're aware of what kinds of frauds are out there. Right now, we're going through a big KYC refresh at Peloton. I'm glad to see that a number of customers are emailing us back and calling us back and saying, is this a legitimate request? Do you really need pieces of ID or incorporation documents or whatever the case is? So I think we need to do a better job in that space and make sure that our customers really understand what's going on, and then build on that trust, because again, we hold a lot of PII, right? So we want to make sure that all that's secure at rest. Nobody as an inside actor can threaten to extract that, sell it, or an external breach.
Can I comment on this?
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
Is an important
Please,
point, actually. So from a startup standpoint, if you really think about it, right, to build this security infrastructure, it's bloody expensive. Big institutions, banks, MasterCard, they have the funds to build this kind of protection, layers of controls. But if you think of a startup, how would you build this kind of capability is a big question. And I always wonder, today, the barriers for entry for a fraudster to get in this space is actually low. And so is the case for our startups to actually plug and play resources. You don't have to build auth. You can actually use Okta or one of these players like Okta, that is used by OpenAI, by the way, as well, which I realized recently. You don't have to build your protection layers that we are building from scratch. You can plug in Sardine and other companies that actually allow you to monitor for synthetic ID. So you don't have to build things from scratch. And the reason why big institutions have to do that, because we are legacy platforms. Our platforms are so big, old, archaic, that to plug a new API and get a startup capability like new protection out there in the market for it to work, we have to build another layer of customization on top. You don't have that baggage. Startups don't have that problem. You can actually take the API, take the SDK, put it in your app. If you are dealing with a client data, if you're dealing with client money, you have to build these capabilities, and you don't have to build from scratch. You have to plug and play and keep monitoring. And I think that layered defense strategy is the way to go as you think of building your protection layers. That's important.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. I think plug and play is a good takeaway from this, because I think that's one way that startups can actually kind of stay ahead of these emerging threats as well. And I was just kind of echoing what you mentioned. I think all three of you mentioned about PII, and initially I felt that PII was only accessible on the dark net, but not anymore, right? Like you said, it's $20 and you have PII, right? And then what you do with that is as we talked about through this, the barriers of entry is really low. So that is something else that's going to keep me up at night. But thank you for that one. I'm just going to move over to the next question here. And I don't know if you guys all see this on your screens right now. I'm going to ask you to pull out your phones again. Try and not put it back in your pocket for the rest of this session. It's going to come out fairly regularly. The next question is, which of the following do you see pose the greatest threat to the fintech industry? And we'd love to see what you guys think here. And don't forget to hit submit your, technical difficulty there. Okay, it's back on. Super. So while we're kind of going over that, Amisha, I think you at some point as well in your initial introduction talked a little bit about AI, and AI really being something that's keeping you up at night. So I guess my next question is kind of moving into that emerging tech space, which I think was going to be a fairly popular one with the audience as well. But AI here has, let's say, revolutionized in a lot of ways fraud prevention through threat detection as well as risk management. But there is the other side of the coin there, and fraudsters have been using AI to exploit vulnerabilities with clients as well as with different biases within algorithms, right? So I guess my question to you here is what is that balance when it comes to human oversight versus automation? And I guess it's something else that you brought up earlier, but how do fintechs with fairly limited budgets really manage that, at least manage to stay ahead of these emerging threats when it comes to AI?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good question. I think this human in the loop system in terms of the use of AI is really critical. And effectively what that means is we use AI to complement how we combat and look at what's happening in the systems, leveraging AI to combat fraud, but we don't replace everything that we're doing with AI tools, because there's still value in that human intervention and oversight in terms of like how we use those frameworks. We also talk about explainable AI, and that's really where we leverage AI to help explain decision-making that we're seeing, whether it be, a decision about a transaction being approved, whether it be a decision about a login being authenticated. We can leverage the decisioning, but you still have frameworks and individuals who have the oversight around how those rules are created. We want to be continuously monitoring what is happening in that ecosystem, because we also have the ability to influence AI. So part of the ethical use of AI is also being able to steer AI, right? And so I think this is where like generative AI and its ability to kind of learn from everything that's out there, but we have influence in what it ingests and what it can, and to steer it in the right direction. And I think we all have a role to play in that. As we talk about just fintechs, I think you touched, Shashank, on a lot of kind of what I would say is the importance of obviously partnerships. Everything does not need to be built from scratch. The importance of layered defense, the importance of using things that are cloud-based. And then I would say paired with all of those things in terms of building a proactive layered defense strategy is really some of the very basic things around ensuring that you've got regular cyber hygiene, right? Think about the way passwords are managed in your business. Think about, how you're vetting third parties that you're working with. Just things like even updating, regular patches on your hardware as it becomes available. There's some really simple things that sometimes we're like, okay, we'll get to it later. I keep getting that window popping up on my screen. Just do all of the things that you can. Make sure that your teams are doing all of the things that they can, because every single step matters as we think about protecting our own ecosystems and taking those steps.
I think that's really interesting that you brought up cyber hygiene. I think even from an individual perspective, that's super important. I think some time ago, I read an interesting fact about how 60 or 70% of Canadians write their passwords on a piece of paper and put it in their pocket. That's a massive number of people who do that. So I think simple cyber hygiene can be like a really good defense, at least first line of defense towards AI attacks. So I'm just going to try and move forward, as I know we have limited time here. The next question is going to be, there we go. The next question is going to be interesting for everyone. So as we all know, the government as well as Payments Canada are aiming for a 2026 launch of open banking as well as RTR. So we'd love to know, how prepared do you think the fintech ecosystem is for these new changes coming in? And do you feel at this point that there's more that can be done from that perspective? I see it's sitting below the 5. It's not a good sign. But I'm just going to turn this over here, Shashank, maybe to you this time around. And my question here is, and to understand it more from a global perspective, right? What changes are you really seeing in this ecosystem globally? And how would you recommend fintechs really kind of take away lessons from that to tackle this? Because there is going to be a lot of change. There's going to be more public use of APIs. There's going to be a lot more data traversing the internet as well. So how do we better prepare, and how do we kind of take learnings away from global players on this?
So we are probably at around 5, 6 is the score, I'd say, when it comes to security readiness, to be ready for open banking and real-time rails for payments. What that effectively means, to simplify it, is today there is a delay in money moving from one place to the other. Imagine a finality of payment where with a push, the money is actually moved. There is no delay. Today, there is actually an ecosystem in Canada at Interact level where we do validate transactions, right? And there are these protocols that we trigger. But imagine with finality of payment, you won't have that luxury of time anymore. And I don't think as a country, as an economy, we are right now set up to be successful if we launch the capabilities as they are today. You would need things like real-time fraud monitoring. You would need ability like liability frameworks. You would need a protocol around reselling of data. So today, banks have a lot of data, MasterCard, other companies have a lot of data. There are organizations that want to consume that data. As a custodian of my client's money data, how do I know with certainty I'm giving that data to the right party? And more importantly, is my client consenting to that data being shared? For how long? Are they consenting to be shared only bill payment or transactions or other things? Those are the level of details that we need to get to and establish framework, security protocols around API. Thankfully, I think we landed on FDX as our API framework as a standard. But things around who is going to be saying that this is the right party to be sharing the data? Where is going to be that marketplace? Who is going to sit in the middle as an agency to allow startups to consume the data from the ecosystem? None of that has been yet finalized. And I know there is work going on and we will get there. But today, if we launch it, these are going to be some open questions. My data as a client is getting resold in the market. Whose fault is it? Is it the bank's fault? Is it the company that took the data and then resold it? We don't know that. So I think that's where focus needs to be. Now, coming back to the second part of the question, good thing is that we don't have to do this from start. We will be, we will be doing this as a follow-on country, if you will, right? So UK has done it, Australia has done it. We are seeing some good success in those markets. We are also seeing risks that actually were realized in those markets. So when we did real-time payments in those countries, your push payment fraud just triggered, right? It went through the roof. The reason was because there was no party in the middle to validate those payments. And they built controls around it now. So we can actually look at Australia, look at UK, look at their secure customer authentication protocols, the liability frameworks, and we don't have to build things from scratch. We can just build it based off of that, because our market reflects a lot of what you see in UK, what you see in Australia. So that's the way to go. I know that it's easier said than done. There is going to be engagement from public, private partnerships, government, regulators. Everyone has to step in and agree that democratization of data is important, which I think we are there now. And now is the next part of how do we build those protocols and frameworks and have them in place when the exchange of data starts to happen.
Yeah, thanks, Shashank. And I think as an insider in the RTR space, I can say some of these conversations are happening on a national scale, but of course, there's a lot more conversations that do need to happen. And like you said, with finality of payment, there does come a whole new array of complications, right? And how do we, with that limited amount of time, actually detect and then protect from fraud? So these are conversations I imagine that will continue in the ecosystem, and I think we will get to a spot where it will be in a better place, but we're all kind of hoping for that. Super. I'm just going to jump over to the next question here. Great. Can I have the phones out again? There we go. See some phones coming out. Okay. So here's kind of the last question to the audience before I kind of switch it over to audience questions so you can ask us some questions. But where do you feel like fintech should invest the most to strengthen fraud prevention? And as I see those kind of popping up here and the panelists, I'm sure you can bounce off of some of those thoughts. But my question over to you here as well is, and Shashank, maybe we can start with you in this one, is over the next 5 years, how do you think the fraud landscape will evolve? Right? We would love to understand some of your predictions and feel free to touch on policy as well as regulation, technology, consumer sentiment, etc.
So I think we are going to see a spike in fraud. There are going to be more frequent incidents because of some of these work that we are doing in real-time payments. We are going to be increasing what we call the attack surface because we are going to be exposing or democratizing data. So now imagine fraudsters have access to multiple sources of data that they can bring together to create a synthetic ID or take over an account. So I think those trends are certainly going to be coming in. You will see a significant amount of traction in AI, deepfake driven AI fraud. I can see that now in some of our day-to-day, and some of those are so brilliantly done that you almost feel impressed. And those are not happening at scale today, but in the next 5 years it will. I think anything to do with knowledge-based authentication will be abused so badly that we will all be compelled to move away from it. So from a startup standpoint, if you are building login, you are building step up, you are building capabilities that to drive high confidence in people who are on your platforms, move away from knowledge-based authentication fully, move to things like passkeys, go to FIDO2 standards, because the reason is very quickly it will get exploited and you will have to move to FIDO2 anyways, which is no passwordless, using biometric, using passkeys to get access to your platforms. That would be the way I would recommend focus on it. One thing that I do want to just say as a last point is if your organizations and your companies could build capabilities that serve clients well in terms of protecting them, that in itself would be a huge value differentiator, because fraud is the biggest moment of truth for a client. When the fraud happens and you are on the call and the person on the other side says, well, there's a 40-minute wait time for you to talk to an agent, it's an upsetting time. It's a moment of truth. So you will see engagement going through the roof if your clients depose their trust and you're able to come through on it.
Sure. Maybe Charles, you would like to weigh in on this as well?
Yeah, those are all really excellent points. I think for me, it's going to be a continual arms race, right? Amisha touched on it earlier. Everybody who's on the legitimate side of technology has to worry about, the legalities, compliance, regulatory compliance, et cetera. The fraudsters don't. They'll, just keep at it and, keep using whatever works. I don't know if anyone in the audience knows about Project Shamrock, excuse me. It's a project coming out of the US, a lady who is tracking organized transnational organized crime groups that are actually setting up in Southeast Asia work camps. They're bringing in human trafficking victims and putting them to work in these camps that they're establishing in the jungle, building infrastructure, power grids, internet, and putting them to work pig butchering scams, right? So these guys aren't going to be doing this if it's not going to make them a ton of money. That's just one example, and I think that's going to continue as a trend. And as far as what fintech should do to kind of address that, and how I think the industry needs to change is, you mentioned Shank earlier, the UK, Australia, UK in 2023 passed some legislation that now there's an offense. It'll go into effect later this year, but they've created basically an offense that's a failure to prevent fraud. So historically, victims of fraud are the ones who shoulder the burden. The UK, and then as of last month, Australia have passed legislation to shift that onus a little bit onto regulated entities. Australia in particular focuses on telecom industry, as well as digital media platforms, but basically social media. And I think we need something very similar in North America, right? We talked about before, emails, cell phone calls, text messages. These are all related to scams. I don't think the onus should be just on banks and fintechs, but also shared amongst those platforms. Social media, tons of scams and fraud there too, right? Like, not to call them out, but you know which ones are out there that exist. You know, make sure that they step up a little bit more and prevent that from happening. I think that's what we need to see in North America to shift that onus. And I think as far as the fintech space goes, you know, don't wait for that regulation to come into place. Like Shashank mentioned, is a differentiator, right? If you can protect your customer base, either through education or enhanced layered security, we've mentioned that a few times, right? Having a layered approach to preventing fraud. I think that's something that is going to start differentiating fintechs and banks moving forward in the future. And I think it's something that everyone needs to take very seriously for all the reasons that were mentioned by my colleagues.
Can I just make one last point? Sure. This is important, actually. So when we are thinking of building layered protection, and I'm saying that it should not translate into friction or unnecessary friction for your customers, because we all want that client to organically come to your platform, engage, get in, do whatever they need to do. If you create a high degree of friction, and we are seeing that in some of our experiences as well, the client will drop off and they'll go to the next company that actually makes it easier, because in that moment of need, they will not care too much about security policy, and this company keeps me more secure than that. They need to do X, and X is getting easily done in another place, right? So think of a risk-based authentication approach. And there are many products out there in the market. You don't have to build it from scratch. They are out-of-the-box AI capabilities that you can bring in, train the model on your data. And the best part of that is that model is eternally learning, not just from your data, but from outside as well. So you could benefit from a lot of that. And we are also starting to use some of that capability now. But there, you actually have a risk-based approach to letting people into your platform. Someone is trying to log in and the risk score is actually very low. Don't step them up. Let them come through until they do a high value or a high risk transaction, in which case you step them up. And you create a higher degree of friction, then at least you have that engagement and an opportunity to upsell, cross-sell, whatever you want to do within the app, within the web. So it's an important data point. Some practical challenges that we are dealing with right now as we are designing experience, I wanted to share with the group as well.
Michelle, what about you?
So I think Charles and Shashank touched on a lot of things. I would say, I think as we look forward, we're going to see this very hyper-personalized AI-based fraud. Right? There's all of this information out there, and it's going to be used to target individuals and specifically target their vulnerabilities. We're going to see that proliferate. I agree that we're going to see these numbers rise substantially. The expansion of attack surfaces with the increase in IoT devices, open banking AI, APIs available, decentralization of finance platforms. We're just going to see this kind of proliferation. Digital identity, I mean, I touched on that in the beginning, is something that keeps me up at night. I think we're going to continue to see that proliferate. And then I think I said that at one point about everything is available as a service. Malware as a service, card testing as a service. We're going to see this continued expansion of probably ransomware as a service. And so very, very low barrier to entry. And as you touched upon, there are entire industries being built not ethically, around fraud. There are predictions out there that we're talking about it reaching trillions of dollars globally, where it will rank as the third largest economy in the world behind the US and China. If we think about just the size of that, staggering. And so I think we are going to continue to see all of these things sort of proliferate and scale. I think as we think about what can we do, yes, layered defense, yes, working with partnerships, yes, thinking about seamless and secure authentication, say paired with technology, and I know you both touched on this as well, is really the importance of collaboration and collaboration alongside policy. Going to be really important, because this can't be a hot potato on liability either, right? It's got to be a very clear view of how do we ingest all of these signals. How do we understand that if there's SIM swap fraud happening, that at the bank you're getting that signal before there's an authorized push payment happening, so that you can include that as part of your hesitancy decision modeling. And then I think more broadly, we all have a role to play here in education and awareness. It is part of building trust in this ecosystem, building trust with your customers. I would also say that, understand as financial institutions, I know as the larger ones, this happens as fintechs. If you're kind of in earlier stages of startup or scale up, understand your security posture. There are a lot of really valuable tools out there. You know, at MasterCard, we have the cybersecurity assessment tool. It's complimentary on our Trust Center. You can use it. There's tools and resources available to understand where are you and where do you need to get to. There's lots of things you can find out there. I would just say when you Google it, make sure you're using trusted resources, because there's a lot of also fraudulent resources out there. We'll try to give you advice. I think I would bucket it as the three things as we think about the path forward: technology, collaboration, and education.
Love that. Thanks.
Yeah, could I just
Charles?
add something? Yeah, I think what Amisha touched on trust in particular, I think there's a bit of inertia there for earlier stage fintechs too, right? And larger banks, regulated entities, fintechs that have been around for a while, have earned that trust by and large from their client base. Whereas if you are a startup, you're unproven. I've seen it before, working at previous employers where people are hesitant to share information with you that you need for maybe KYC, AML purposes, where they don't understand like, why do you need this piece of ID or et cetera. And it's a lot harder to overcome that in an early stage. So, going back to Shashank's point about designing onboarding flows where you're introducing the minimum amount of friction that you can to not just check the boxes from a regulatory perspective, but really like ensure that you have all the data points you need to make good decisioning, not just PII, et cetera, but also things like device biometrics, human biometrics, et cetera. I think it's important to really get that right out of the gate, because trust is one of those things, once you lose it, incredibly difficult to bring it back, right? So it's something that we need to think about as a fintech very early on to have a good plan for that.
And that's one of the biggest reasons we decided to choose this as a topic for this event as well, is once you lose that trust factor, getting it back can be incredibly hard. So I know we're almost out of time, but I'm going to try and open up to one or two questions from the audience. So does anyone have any questions? Maybe just raise your hand and I can come around. Yeah, Ron, I saw your hand first there.
Thanks for the really insightful panel. I'm curious, we talked about trust, especially Charles at the end there, and the idea that startups are often unproven. I think there's, based on the discussions in this panel and all the data we're seeing, there's a lot of really interesting opportunity in the cyberspace and the fraud space. If I'm a startup who's relatively unproven, I'm looking to get early traction, especially with some of the big organizations that all three or all four of you even work for or have worked for in the past. How can I convince a MasterCard or a Scotiabank or a Peloton to give me a shot and let me test out my technology and kind of break into those large enterprises?
Some great question, by the way. This is one of the classic challenges we deal with. We have startups and we partner with them. Sometimes we fund them. And what we realize is that they're approaching things from a perspective of a startup, not a bank. So defining that value prop is very important. And it's a very crowded space, by the way. This security space is so crowded right now because there is genuine players. There is evolving threat landscape, so that problem keeps changing. The problem statement is not consistent. And then you have a lot of players who are saying, I can do this. But when you start to get into the weeds of it, you realize that actually, no, that's not happening. So how do you create that value prop that solves a very genuine problem for a big institutions like MasterCard or a bank, Scotiabank, is very important. I think that's the first important layer of it, right? And then the second part of it is, how do you do this in a piloted way? So you can look at it from an alliance standpoint. So sure, let's say you won't get a lot of traction working with one bank, but you can approach alliance partners like Interact, which work collectively with a lot of banks, or with another startup that actually is in a, let's say, a Series C, Series D, and they are actually well off in that integration roadmap with a financial institution, and you build the value prop around that as a supplement and you bring it there. I think these are two ways to look at it. Canada in general, what I've seen is this, and I've worked in UK as well, and Asia Pacific, Singapore. What I've seen in Canada is that it tends to be a very risk-averse market. It's an inward-looking economy, self-sufficient, oil, gas, everything is here, right? So there is not a lot of dependencies, which creates you risk-averse. And I think Canadians in general, I've seen, are more risk-averse. So to create that opportunity, it takes a lot of time. But once you have, then it starts to snowball. So that would be my approach: partnership, right, and identifying that value prop. These are the two things that you have to focus on.
I think we can do one more quick question. Is anyone? Yeah, I see a question.
Thank you. I want to come back to the first question that was asked to you guys, but maybe from a different perspective. If the whole audience here, we were all fraudsters, what security measure implemented in your companies would keep us awake at night?
Charles, Amisha, would you like to jump in? I love that question, by the way.
I don't want to give away the secret sauce, but I think to build on an answer that Amisha gave earlier with AI can, I think, remove some of the repetitive. So AI is really good at pattern recognition, exception detection. So leverage AI to remove the alerts that are the easiest for it to solve, right? So whether it's an onboarding perspective or a transaction monitoring perspective, there'll be some percentage of alerts that are clearly good and clearly bad, and free up your human analysts to focus on the high value work. And so I'm going to cop out a little bit and say that I still believe that the human analyst is the best thing that you have going for you. Give them the tools that they need to remove as much of that. I'm going to use the word grunt work. It's not, very sophisticated, but to a certain degree, it's true, right? There's a lot of work on the risk side that is just looking at alerts, clearing things day in, day out, get all the easy stuff out of the way, get your human analysts, especially your really good investigators on the hard cases, and get them to clear those as quickly as possible. But while giving them the freedom to fully investigate, right? If you set a unrealistic SLA of like 5 minutes on a complicated case, that's not going to give an analyst enough time to really get it out of the way. But I think finding good human capital, some people have a knack for this stuff. That's how I broke into the industry, right? Before this, I was doing something completely different. Got brought on as an underwriting analyst, and 10 years later, here I am, directing risk and compliance. I think, if you're good at what you do, you find the right people, train them up, retain them, and have them do the work, the valuable work to keep your platform safe. That would be my answer.
Do you want to add?
Yeah, I would add to that we, even though we are in a regulatory environment and we're ethically using technology, we are embracing it, and we are investing the time and focus to make sure that we are leveraging this technology for good, to both deliver, good value into the ecosystem, but also to combat fraud. I know as a network, I can speak to the billions of transactions that we see globally. We've been using AI for over a decade in various scenarios, including to combat fraud. In the last 3 years alone, through AI technologies, we've deflected over $50 billion worth of fraud on the network. So the use of technology and the embracing of it, even though we have to go through more steps, think about appropriate use cases, ethical use of what we're doing, we are very actively investing in not only cutting edge new technology, but also leveraging embracing the technology that's out there, not shying away from it, so that we can kind of get to a point where we're trying to stay a step ahead. So yeah, that's what I would position, is that we are very much aware of what's happening in the ecosystem and working very tirelessly to combat it.
Thanks, Amisha. So I think that's all that we have time for right now. So thank you to the panelists so much for coming up and coming all the way down from Toronto, as well as coming up from Montreal, Charles. We are out of time for the panel. You got the secret sauce there. I truly hope you're not a fraudster, but we'll find out. And feel free to find the panelists at the end of this discussion, and they will be happy to have more conversations with you around fraud. There was the one question that I wanted to ask the panelists, but I didn't get a chance to with the time. But in case you'd like to, is a question around quantum computing, but you could ask them that question when you find them outside over drinks. But we are getting closer to the age of quantum computing, at least with the new chips coming out, with BMO announcing that they would be using quantum before the end of this year. Do you think that's something we need to worry about? Because that's another thing that's going to keep me up at night. But thank you again to the panelists, and we will see you guys outside. Before that, I'm going to hand it over to Karina. Thanks.
You want to kick me out without even saying bye? Thank you so much to our panelists. You guys did an amazing job. It was super interesting. C'est super intéressant. Parlant de petite part technique, tout bientôt, en fait, comme vous le savez, il y a plein d'alcool, vous allez vous faire chercher un petit verre après, il y a quelques bouchées, donc n'hésitez pas à rester après pour réseauter, on est là encore pour un petit bout. Mais bien sûr, avant de quitter, je voulais dire un grand merci à l'espace CDPQ. Ça fait plusieurs fois qu'on fait nos événements ici, on est extrêmement reconnaissants. C'est un excellent partenaire et comme vous le savez, comme l'a mentionné David plus tôt, un espace exceptionnel où il y a plein d'investisseurs qui se regroupent. Donc, c'est un espace excellent pour tous les entrepreneurs qui veulent découvrir le réseau de l'investissement. Donc, merci beaucoup à l'espace CDPQ. Bien sûr, je vous avais mentionné tantôt, on a plein d'initiatives. Allez nous suivre sur LinkedIn. Il y a plein d'initiatives pour nos entrepreneurs. Donc, le Fintech Hub, on a le certificat en ce moment qui est en cours, qui est le dernier cours qui arrive tout bientôt. Donc, allez suivre nos initiatives. Il y a toutes sortes de choses pour à peu près tout le monde, entrepreneurs, gens de l'écosystème, collaborateurs et autres. Et je vais juste rappeler qu'on a le Fintech Challenge avec la gang de l'Humania. Ils ont toutes des petites cocardes avec un ruban mauve. Donc, allez les voir. Ils vont pouvoir vous parler davantage du Fintech Challenge. Je vous rappelle que c'est un challenge avec un potentiel prix en argent jusqu'à 35 000 $. Donc, un beau challenge. Ils vont pouvoir vous en parler plus en détail. Puis d'ailleurs, en fait, je vais inviter l'équipe à venir me rejoindre sur scène. Si vous êtes... les voix sont comme non. Juste pour que les gens puissent vous voir, vous reconnaître et puis savoir de venir vous parler après pendant le... Donc, vous n'êtes pas obligés, là, mais comme... Écoutez, il y a de la place avec moi sur scène, là. Donc, a reminder that if you are interested in the Fintech Challenge, you can go and see our team here. They'll tell you more about the challenge, super interesting challenge. It'll tell you more about the mandate. If you're a founder, if you're just anybody in the ecosystem, here are your people you need to go talk to during the drinks. So without further ado, follow us on LinkedIn, but more importantly, go and network with everyone around you. And we'll see you all in the next FinTech drinks. If you're interested to know who are the companies who are here tonight, take a quick look around. These are the companies on the screens. So go around, ask people, maybe you'll find the person you wanted to talk to tonight. So merci beaucoup à tout le monde. Merci l'équipe d'Humania. Merci.